It was supposed to be a night celebrating youth and possibility, the kind of high school talent show that small-town America does best, where awkward teens stumble through guitar solos and cheerleaders flip across wooden stages. But when 15-year-old Emma Caldwell walked to the center of the spotlight, something shifted in the air. She wasn't what they expected. She was heavy-set, wearing a homemade costume, her face already flushed before the music even started. And when the first notes dropped, a pop song everyone knew, she began to move. The laughter started small, a snicker from the back row, then louder. Whispers became jeers. Parents looked away, teachers stiffened. Emma kept dancing, but her hands began to shake. She was alone under those lights, drowning in cruelty, on the edge of breaking. Then, from the shadows near the gym doors, a man stood, tall, weathered, leather jacket worn smooth by years on the road, boots that had kicked dirt across half the country. He walked down the center aisle without hesitation, climbed the 3 wooden steps to the stage, and extended his hand. Emma looked at him, this stranger, this biker, and took it. He smiled, and together they danced. What happened next became legend. The laughter died. The gym went silent. Then one person clapped, then 10. Then the whole room rose to its feet, roaring with something they hadn't felt in years: decency. That man's name was Victor Hawk Garrison, and what no one in that room knew was that 16 years earlier he'd made a promise to a dying friend, a promise he thought he'd never have to keep. Until tonight. This is the story of a girl who dared to be seen, a biker who remembered his word, and a moment that reminded a town what courage actually looks like. Emma Caldwell had never been the kind of girl people noticed for the right reasons. She'd spent most of her 15 years learning how to fold herself smaller, walking close to lockers, sitting in back rows, keeping her voice low, her head down, her world narrow. It wasn't cruelty that taught her this. It was survival. Because in Ashford Creek, a small town tucked into the Ohio River Valley, where everyone knew everyone and memory was currency, being different meant being a target. And Emma was different. She was heavy, not just a little. Enough that the other girls whispered when she walked by. Enough that boys made pig noises in the hallways. Enough that teachers smiled too kindly, the way adults do when they pity you but don't know how to help. But Emma had one thing they couldn't take. She loved to dance. Not the way girls on TikTok danced, sharp, sexy, filtered. Emma danced the old way, the way her grandmother taught her before the dementia took her memory. Swing, jive. A little bit of ballet she'd learned from YouTube tutorials late at night, when the house was quiet and no one could see. Dancing made her feel like she wasn't trapped inside a body the world had decided wasn't good enough. When she moved, she was free. So when the school announced the annual Spring Talent Showcase, Emma did something no one expected. She signed up. Her mother, Linda, had stared at the permission slip like it was a bomb. "Honey," she'd said carefully, folding laundry in the living room of their cramped duplex, "are you sure about this?" Emma nodded, her jaw set. "I'm sure. People can be mean. I know." Linda looked at her daughter, really looked, and saw something she hadn't seen in years. Determination, fire, the kind of stubborn hope that refuses to be reasonable. She signed the paper. The next 3 weeks were a blur of practice. Emma rehearsed in her bedroom, in the school's back stairwell during lunch, in the garage after her stepdad left for his night shift at the lumber mill. She picked a song, upbeat, classic, something that made her smile. She borrowed fabric from her aunt and stitched together a costume by hand. Black pants, a glittery top she found at Goodwill. Nothing fancy, but it was hers. The night of the showcase, the high school gym was packed. Bleachers full of families, younger kids running up and down the aisles, the smell of popcorn and cheap cologne hanging in the air. Backstage, Emma stood with the other performers. A mix of guitarists, singers, a kid doing magic tricks, 2 cheerleaders planning a synchronized routine. None of them looked at her. She didn't care. She closed her eyes, counted her breath, and waited for her name to be called. When it came, she walked onto that stage like she was walking into war. The lights hit her face. The crowd murmured. She heard a few snickers already starting. Her heart hammered so hard she thought it might crack a rib. But she didn't run. She stood center stage, raised her arms, and waited for the music. The first beat dropped, and Emma Caldwell began to dance. If you're watching this, drop a comment below and let me know where you're tuning in from. Let's build this community together. Victor Hawk Garrison hadn't planned on being there that night. He'd rolled into Ashford Creek 3 hours earlier on his Harley, engine rumbling like distant thunder, the kind of sound that made people look twice. He wasn't there for nostalgia. He wasn't there for closure. He was there because of a promise, one he'd carried in his chest for 16 years, like a scar that never quite healed. The promise had been made in a field hospital outside Kandahar, Afghanistan, in the summer of 2009. Hawk had been a sergeant then, 26 years old, broad-shouldered and battle-hard. His best friend, Corporal Daniel Caldwell, had been lying on a stretcher with shrapnel in his gut and blood soaking through the gauze faster than the medics could replace it. "Hawk," Danny had whispered, gripping his wrist, "if I don't make it, you're gonna make it. Listen," Danny's voice cracked. "I got a baby girl back home, Emma, 2 months old. If something happens to me, if something happens to Linda, promise me you'll look after her. Promise me she won't be alone." Hawk had nodded, throat tight. "I promise, brother." Danny died 4 hours later. Hawk came home 3 months after that, medically discharged with a bum leg and a head full of ghosts. He tried to visit Linda and baby Emma once, but Linda had remarried by then, a guy named Rick, who didn't like questions about the past. Hawk left his number, told her to call if she ever needed anything. She never did, so Hawk did what a lot of veterans do when the world gets too loud. He rode, joined a motorcycle club, traveled, worked odd jobs, kept his promises small and his ghosts at arm's length, until 2 weeks ago, when he got a message on Facebook from a woman he barely recognized. It was Linda. "Hawk, I don't know if you remember me, but Emma's in trouble. Not the kind you call the cops for, the kind that breaks a kid from the inside. She's being bullied bad at school. I'm scared she's going to do something desperate. I know it's been a long time, but Danny always said you were a man of your word. If there's anything you can do, I'm begging you." Hawk had read that message 3 times. Then he'd packed his saddlebag, kicked his bike to life, and pointed it east. Now he stood in the back of a high school gym, leather jacket zipped halfway, arms crossed, scanning the crowd. He'd spotted Linda in the 3rd row, nervous, chewing her nails. He hadn't approached her yet. He wanted to see Emma first, wanted to see what Danny's little girl had grown into. When her name was called, he saw her walk onto that stage, tall, heavy, shoulders squared like a soldier heading into fire. And for a moment, Hawk saw Danny, not in her face, not in her body, but in her spine, in the way she refused to flinch. The music started. Emma began to move, and that's when the laughter began. Emma heard it before she saw it. A snicker from the left side of the bleachers, then another, then a full laugh, loud and sharp, cutting through the music like a blade. Her feet faltered for half a second, but she pushed through, spinning, stepping, trying to hold the choreography she'd practiced 100 times. But the laughter spread. Someone shouted, "Go home, fat girl!" Another voice, "She's gonna break the stage!" A group of boys in the back row started chanting, "Moo, moo, moo." Emma's vision blurred, not from tears. She wouldn't let them see her cry, but from shame, from rage, from the suffocating weight of every cruel word she'd ever swallowed and tried to forget. She kept dancing, barely. Her arms moved, but they felt heavy now. Her feet hit the marks, but the joy was gone. She was a puppet made of pain, and the strings were being pulled by voices she couldn't silence. In the 3rd row, Linda Caldwell stood up, her face twisted in fury. "Stop it!" she screamed. "She's just a kid." But her voice was drowned out. The laughter had become a wave. Teachers moved toward the bleachers, trying to calm the crowd, but it was too late. The damage was done. Emma stood frozen center stage, trembling, her glittery top catching the light like shattered glass. She looked out into the crowd, into the sea of faces laughing, sneering, filming on their phones, and something inside her broke. She turned toward the wings. She was going to run. And then she heard footsteps, heavy, steady, boots on wood. She turned. A man was walking toward her from the back of the gym. Tall, broad, older, maybe 40, maybe 50. His face was lined and weathered, stubble on his jaw, grey creeping into his dark hair. He wore a black leather jacket with patches she didn't recognize and jeans worn soft at the knees. His eyes were sharp, kind, unafraid. He climbed the steps to the stage. The gym went quiet. He stopped in front of her, towering, and for one terrifying second Emma thought he was there to mock her too. Then he smiled. Not a smirk, a real smile, and he held out his hand. "May I?" he asked, his voice low and rough like gravel under rain. Emma stared at him. Her heart pounded. She didn't know him, didn't understand, but something in his eyes, something steady and sure, made her believe it was safe. She took his hand. The music was still playing, and Victor Hawk Garrison began to dance, watching from Ashford Creek, Ohio, 8:47 p.m., May 14th, 2024. Hawk didn't dance the way Emma did. He didn't spin or leap. He didn't know the choreography, but he knew rhythm. He knew how to move with confidence, how to lead, how to make a partner feel safe. He took Emma's hand and guided her through a simple two-step, then a spin, then a playful dip that made her gasp, and then, unexpectedly, laugh. The gym was silent. Every eye in the room was locked on them. Parents, students, teachers. No one moved, no one spoke. The cruel laughter had evaporated like steam. Hawk didn't look at the crowd. He looked at Emma. "You're doing great," he said quietly. "Just for her." "I don't even know you," she whispered back, her voice shaking. "I know, but I knew your dad." Emma's eyes went wide. "Your real dad," Hawk continued, never breaking rhythm. "Danny Caldwell, best man I ever knew. And he made me promise something a long time ago." "What?" "That if you ever needed someone to stand with you, I would." Tears streamed down Emma's face now, but they weren't tears of shame anymore. They were something else, something raw and real and too big to name. The song hit its final chorus. Hawk spun her one more time, then dipped her low, holding her steady, his grip firm and certain. When he brought her back up, he let go of her hand and stepped back, gesturing to the crowd with a slight bow, as if to say, "This girl right here, she's the star, not me." And then the applause started. One person, then 10, then 50. Then the entire gym rose to its feet, clapping, cheering, shouting Emma's name like she'd just won an Oscar. Linda was sobbing in the third row, hands over her mouth. Teachers were wiping their eyes. Even some of the kids who'd been laughing minutes ago were clapping now, shamefaced and quiet. Emma stood center stage, chest heaving, face wet with tears, and for the first time in her life, she felt seen. Not as the fat girl, not as the target, but as a person, a dancer, a human being who deserved to take up space. Hawk gave her a small nod, then turned and walked off the stage the same way he'd come, calm, steady, like he'd just done the most normal thing in the world. But before he reached the exit, Linda intercepted him. "Hawk," she said, voice breaking, "thank you. I don't even know how to—" "You don't have to," Hawk said simply. "I made a promise. Danny would be so proud." Hawk's jaw tightened. He'd be proud of her. Linda nodded, then glanced back at the stage, where Emma was being swarmed by classmates, some apologizing, some hugging her, some just staring in awe. "She's going to remember this forever," Linda said. "Good," Hawk replied. "She should." He started toward the door again, but Linda called after him. "Hawk, will you stay? Just for a little while? I think Emma might want to meet you. Really meet you." Hawk paused. He wasn't good at this part. The staying, the talking, the being still. But he thought of Danny, and he thought of the promise. "Yeah," he said, "I'll stay." An hour later, the gym had mostly cleared out. Emma sat on the edge of the stage, legs dangling, still wearing her glittery top. Her mother stood nearby, talking quietly with a teacher. Across the room, leaning against the gym wall with his arms crossed, was Hawk. Emma had been stealing glances at him for the last 20 minutes. He looked like someone out of a movie, the kind of man who'd seen things, done things, and didn't need to talk about it. Dangerous, maybe, but not to her. Finally, she worked up the nerve to walk over. "Hi," she said, her voice small. Hawk looked down at her and nodded. "Hi. My mom says you knew my dad." "I did. The one who died." "Yeah," Emma swallowed. "I don't remember him. I was too little." "That's okay," Hawk said. "He remembered you, talked about you all the time, showed everyone pictures. He was real proud. Of a baby who couldn't even talk yet." Hawk smiled faintly. "Yeah, that's what dads do." Emma looked down at her hands. "Why'd you do it? Get up there with me?" Hawk was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Because your dad asked me to look after you, and I figured tonight you needed someone to stand with you. You didn't have to." "Yeah," Hawk said. "I did." Emma's throat tightened. "People are going to forget. By Monday it'll be the same. They'll go back to being mean." "Maybe," Hawk said, "but you won't forget. And that's what matters." "What if it's not enough?" Hawk crouched down so he was eye level with her. His voice was low and steady, the kind of voice that didn't lie. "Listen to me," he said. "The world's gonna try to make you smaller. It's gonna tell you you're not good enough, not pretty enough, not worth the space you take up. And some days you're gonna believe it. But on the days you don't, on the days you get up and dance anyway, that's when you win." Emma's eyes filled with tears again. "I don't feel like I'm winning." "You are," Hawk said. "You just don't see it yet." Ushigi, he stood up, pulled a worn business card from his jacket pocket and handed it to her. It had a phone number scrawled on it in faded ink. "You ever need anything," Hawk said, "you call me. I don't care what time. I don't care what it is. You call." Emma took the card, clutching it like it was made of gold. "Okay," she whispered. Hawk nodded once, then turned toward the door. "Hawk?" Emma called after him. He stopped, glanced back. "Thank you." He gave her a small, crooked smile. "Thank your dad. He's the one who made me promise." And then he walked out into the night, boots echoing on tile, leather jacket disappearing into the dark. Emma stood there holding the card, her heart pounding, her mind racing. She didn't know it yet, but that night would change everything. By Monday morning, the video had gone viral. Someone in the audience had filmed the whole thing. Emma's dance, the cruel laughter, Hawk's entrance, the standing ovation. They'd uploaded it to TikTok with the caption, "Fat girl gets bullied on stage until a biker saves her. This is what a real man looks like." Within 48 hours, it had 15 million views. By Wednesday, it was on the news. Local stations picked it up first, then regional, then national. Good Morning America reached out. So did Ellen. The video was dissected, analyzed, celebrated. Hawk's face became an internet symbol for quiet heroism. Emma became the girl who didn't quit. At school, everything shifted. Kids who'd laughed at her now wanted to sit with her at lunch. Teachers treated her like she was fragile and important. The principal called her into his office and apologized, not for what happened, but for not stopping it sooner. Emma didn't know how to feel. Part of her was relieved. Part of her was angry that it took a viral video for people to care. And part of her just wanted to disappear. But she didn't disappear. She started a dance club at school. Just a small thing. Meeting in the cafeteria after school on Thursdays. At first, only 3 people showed up. Then 8, then 20. Kids of all sizes, all backgrounds, all levels of skill. Some could barely move. Some were naturals. But they all danced, and no one laughed. Emma taught them what her grandmother had taught her, that dancing wasn't about being perfect. It was about being free. And slowly, week by week, something changed. Not just in the school, in the town. People started talking about kindness, about standing up, about the difference one person can make when they choose not to look away. One Saturday afternoon, Emma got a call from an unknown number. "Hello," she answered, cautious. "Emma." The voice was familiar, deep, steady. "Hawk?" "Yeah, just wanted to check in. See how you're doing." Emma smiled, the first real smile she'd had all week. "I'm okay. Better than okay, actually." "Good, that's real good. I started a dance club." "I heard. Saw a picture online. Looked like you had a full house." "We did." Emma paused. "Hawk, can I ask you something?" "Sure. Did you ever think it would turn into this? The video and everything?" Hawk was quiet for a moment. "No, but I'm glad it did. Means people are paying attention." "To what?" "To what matters." Emma felt tears prick her eyes again. "I don't know how to thank you." "You already did," Hawk said. "You got back up." They talked for a little while longer. About nothing, really. Just small things, but it felt like everything. When they hung up, Emma looked at the card he'd given her, still tucked into her phone case. She wasn't alone anymore. If this story moved you, hit that like button. It really helps us keep sharing stories like Emma's. 3 months later, Emma got an invitation she never expected. It came in the mail, a handwritten letter on thick paper, sealed with wax. "Emma Caldwell, you are cordially invited to the annual Iron Promise Memorial Ride, honoring those who served and those who keep their word. This year, you're our guest of honor. We ride at dawn, Ashford Creek to Pittsburgh, 200 miles. Breakfast at the end. Hope you'll join us. Hawk and the Ironclad Brotherhood." Emma's hands shook as she read it. Her mother looked over her shoulder. "Are you going to go?" "I don't even have a motorcycle." "You'll ride with someone." "They wouldn't invite you if they didn't want you there." Emma thought about it. The idea terrified her, but it also thrilled her. She'd never done anything like that, never been part of something bigger. She called Hawk. "I got the letter," she said. "You coming?" I don't know. I've never been on a motorcycle." "Then it's about time." Emma laughed nervously. "What if I'm scared?" "Then you're scared, but you come anyway." She thought about that. About all the times she'd been scared before, about the night she walked onto that stage. "Okay," she said, "I'll come." "Good. I'll pick you up at 5 a.m. Wear layers, bring sunglasses, and Emma?" "Yeah?" "Bring that glittery top." "Why?" "Because you earned the right to shine." The morning of the ride, Emma woke before her alarm. She dressed in jeans, boots, a hoodie, and underneath, just because it felt right, she wore the glittery top. At 5 a.m. sharp, she heard the rumble of an engine outside. She stepped onto the porch. The sky was still dark, stars fading into grey, and there at the curb was Hawk on his Harley. Behind him, stretching down the block, were 30 more motorcycles, riders in leather, flags on their bikes, engines growling low like patient lions. Hawk grinned. "You ready?" Emma's heart hammered. "I think so." "Good. Climb on." She did, awkwardly at first, gripping his shoulders, her thighs tight against the seat. Hawk handed her a helmet. "Hold on tight," he said. "And don't lean against the turns. Lean with them." "Okay." He kicked the engine. It roared, and then they rode. The sun rose over the Ohio River as the convoy rolled east, engines singing in harmony, chrome flashing in the light. Emma had never felt anything like it. The wind, the speed, the sense of being part of something unstoppable. They stopped once for gas. The riders gathered around her, introducing themselves. Veterans, teachers, nurses, a former cop, a librarian. People who'd survived loss, who'd kept promises, who knew what it meant to stand up when it mattered. One woman, older, with silver braids and kind eyes, handed Emma a patch. "You earned this," she said. It read, "Ironclad, unbroken." Emma pinned it to her jacket, tears streaming. By the time they reached Pittsburgh, she wasn't the same girl who'd climbed onto that bike. She was stronger, freer, unafraid. The ride ended at a small diner on the outskirts of Pittsburgh, a place called Rosie's, with red booths and a jukebox that still played vinyl. Inside, the tables had been pushed together. Breakfast was served family style: eggs, bacon, pancakes, coffee strong enough to wake the dead. Emma sat between Hawk and the woman with silver braids, whose name was Joanne. Around her the riders laughed, told stories, remembered the dead. At one point, Hawk stood and tapped his coffee mug with a fork. The room went quiet. "Most of you know why we ride," he said. "To honor promises, to remember the ones who didn't make it home, to stand with the people who need us." He looked at Emma. "This year, we ride for Emma Caldwell, daughter of Corporal Daniel Caldwell, who I served with in Afghanistan. Danny made me promise to look after her, and 16 years later, I got the chance to keep that promise." The room erupted in applause. Emma's face burned, but she didn't look away. Hawk continued. "Emma reminded me why we do this, why promises matter, why showing up matters. She got on that stage even though the world told her not to, and when the world tried to tear her down, she got back up." He raised his mug. "To Emma, and to everyone who refuses to quit." "To Emma," the room echoed. She couldn't hold back the tears anymore. They came fast and hot, but she didn't care. After breakfast, Hawk walked her outside. The sun was high now, the parking lot warm. "You did good today," he said. "I didn't do anything, I just held on." "That's enough." Emma looked at him. "Hawk, why do you do this? The rides, the promises, all of it." He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "Because a long time ago I needed someone to stand with me, and nobody did. So I decided I'd be that person for someone else." "Did it work?" He looked at her and smiled. "Yeah, I think it did." A year later, Emma stood on a different stage. This one was in a college auditorium. She was 18 now, a senior, and she'd just been awarded a full scholarship to study dance and social work. In the audience sat her mother, her stepdad, her dance club, and, in the back row, arms crossed, wearing the same leather jacket, Hawk. When Emma's name was called, she walked to the podium with her head high. She looked out at the crowd. No fear, no shame, just gratitude. "I almost didn't make it here," she said. "Not because I wasn't smart enough or talented enough, but because I didn't think I was worth it." She paused, searching the crowd until she found Hawk. "But someone reminded me that I was, and he did it by keeping a promise to a man he loved, a man I never got to know, my father." Her voice cracked, but she kept going. "I'm here because someone stood with me when I needed it most, and I want to spend the rest of my life doing the same for others." The room erupted in applause. Hawk didn't clap, he just nodded. Once. Slow and sure. That was all she needed. After the ceremony, Emma found him outside. "You came," she said. "Told you I would." She smiled. "You always do." "That's the idea." They stood in silence for a moment, the evening air warm and soft. "Hawk?" Emma said. "Thank you. For everything." He looked at her, this girl who'd become a woman, who'd fought her way into her own life, who'd turned pain into purpose. "You don't thank a promise," Hawk said. "You honor it." "How?" "By keeping one of your own." Emma nodded. "I will." Hawk smiled, then turned toward his bike. "Hawk?" Emma called after him. He stopped. "If you ever need someone to stand with you, you call me." He looked back, eyes bright. "Deal." And then he rode off into the sunset, engine roaring, leaving behind a girl who'd learned that the bravest thing you can do is refuse to disappear. Because promises aren't just kept, they're lived. The farmhouse sat on 12 acres, just outside Ashford Creek, surrounded by oak trees that swayed in the wind and wild flowers that bloomed every spring without asking permission. It wasn't fancy. The porch sagged a little on the left side, the paint was peeling in places, and the barn out back leaned like it had seen too many storms. But it was home. Emma Caldwell, now Emma Caldwell Reyes, married to a social worker named Miguel she'd met in grad school, stood on that porch every Saturday morning with a cup of coffee in her hands, watching the driveway. She was 23 now, a licensed dance therapist working with at-risk youth in 3 counties. Her body had changed over the years, not smaller, not fixed, but stronger. She carried herself differently, like someone who'd learned that taking up space wasn't a crime. Behind her, through the screen door, she could hear Miguel making breakfast and their dog, a rescue mutt named Boone, barking at absolutely nothing. It was a good life, quiet, full, the kind of life her father would have been proud of. But every Saturday, she waited. Because every Saturday without fail, at exactly 9 a.m., she heard the rumble of engines coming up the dirt road. The ironclad brotherhood had grown over the years. What started as 30 riders had become over 100. Men and women from all walks of life who'd heard the story of the biker who danced with a bullied girl and decided they wanted to be part of something that mattered. They called themselves the Keepers. Not because they kept secrets, but because they kept promises. Every Saturday, a rotation of 10 to 15 riders would show up at Emma's farmhouse. Sometimes it was Hawk leading the pack. Sometimes it was Joanne, the silver-haired woman who'd given Emma her first patch. Sometimes it was newer members, young veterans, former addicts, people who'd been given second chances and wanted to pay it forward. They came for what Emma called the gathering. It wasn't a meeting, it wasn't a party, it was something in between. They'd pull their bikes into the field behind the barn, engines cutting out one by one until the only sound was the wind and the birds. Then they'd sit on hay bales, on blankets, on the porch steps, and they'd talk about life, about loss, about the promises they'd kept and the ones they were still trying to keep. Emma would lead a short workshop, sometimes on dance therapy, sometimes just on breathing, on being present, on learning to forgive yourself for not being perfect. Miguel would cook. Boone would run circles around the bikers, convinced he was one of them. And for a few hours, the world felt manageable. But the most important part of the gathering wasn't the talking or the dancing or even the food. It was the wall. Inside the barn, Emma had built something she called the Promise Wall. It was simple. A massive corkboard stretching across the entire back wall, covered in notes, photos, letters and cards. Each one represented a promise kept. Some were small. I promised my daughter I'd quit drinking, 90 days sober. Others were massive. I promised I'd find my brother's killer. After 12 years, he was arrested. There were photos of people who'd been saved, rescued, supported, kids who'd been bullied and found their voice, veterans who'd been suicidal and chose to live, families reunited, debts forgiven, second chances taken, and right in the center of the wall, framed in wood that Hawk had carved himself, was a photo from that night 5 years ago. Emma on stage, terrified, shaking, and Hawk's hand reaching out. Beneath it, in Hawk's messy handwriting, were the words, "A promise isn't just words. It's who you become when no one's watching." On this particular Saturday, Emma heard the bikes before she saw them. She smiled, set down her coffee, and walked toward the field. The riders were already dismounting, Hawk at the front as always, moving slower now, his bad leg acting up in the spring cold. Behind him were faces she recognized and a few she didn't. A younger woman with a shaved head and a navy tattoo. An older man in a wheelchair being helped off a sidecar rig. A teenager, maybe 17, eyes wide and nervous like he didn't know if he belonged. Emma walked straight to Hawk. "Morning, old man," she said, grinning. "Watch it," Hawk muttered, but he was smiling too. They hugged, the kind of hug that didn't need words. Then Emma turned to the group. "Welcome back," she said. "And welcome to anyone new. You know the rules. No judgment. No pressure. Just honesty." The riders nodded. They moved into the barn, settling into their usual spots. Miguel brought out trays of scrambled eggs, toast and fruit. Boone made his rounds, demanding attention from anyone who'd give it. And slowly, one by one, people began to share. The woman with the shaved head talked about leaving an abusive relationship and starting over in a new city. The man in the wheelchair talked about his son, who'd been in prison for 8 years and was finally being released next month. The nervous teenager admitted he'd tried to kill himself 3 months ago and didn't know how to keep living. Emma listened to all of them, not as a therapist, not as a teacher, just as someone who understood what it meant to be seen. When it was her turn, she stood and walked to the promise wall. "I want to add something today," she said. She pulled a folded piece of paper from her pocket and pinned it to the board. It was a letter, handwritten, tear-stained. "This," she said, her voice steady, "is from a girl in Pittsburgh, 16 years old. She saw the video of me and Hawk 5 years ago. She says it saved her life. She'd been planning to end it, but she saw that moment, saw someone stand up for someone else, and she decided to wait. Just one more day, then another, then another." Emma's voice cracked. "She wrote to thank me, but I didn't save her. She saved herself. All I did was show her it was possible." The barn was silent. Then Hawk stood. He walked over to the promise wall, pulled a marker from his pocket, and wrote something beneath the letter. "This is why we ride." The room erupted in applause. Not loud, not showy, but deep. The kind of applause that comes from the chest, from the heart, from the place where promises live. After the gathering ended and the riders had left, Emma and Hawk sat on the porch together, watching the sun dip lower in the sky. "You ever think about that night?" Emma asked. "The talent show." "Every day," Hawk said. "Do you regret it?" He looked at her, eyebrows raised. "Regret what?" "Getting involved. Making it public. All the attention." Hawk shook his head. "Not for a second." "Even though it changed everything?" "Especially because it changed everything," he said. "That's the point, Emma. We don't make promises because they're easy. We make them because they matter." Emma nodded, throat tight. They sat in silence for a while, the way old friends do. Then Emma said, "I got an email this week from a school district in California. They want me to come out and train their staff on anti-bullying programs. They specifically mentioned the video." Hawk smiled. "You gonna go?" "I think so. Miguel's coming with me. We're thinking of making it a road trip." "Do it good," Hawk said. "The world needs more of you." Emma laughed softly. "I'm just one person." "So was I," Hawk said. "Look what happened." That night, after Miguel had gone to bed and the house was quiet, Emma sat at her desk and opened her laptop. She clicked on a folder labeled Messages. Inside were over 3,000 emails, direct messages, and letters from people all over the world. People who'd seen the video, people who'd been bullied, people who'd been saved. People who'd decided to keep going because of one moment, one man extending his hand. Emma didn't read them all. She couldn't. It was too much. But she read one every night. Just one. As a reminder. Tonight's was from a boy in Ireland, 12 years old. He wrote, "I got beat up at school every day for being fat. Then I saw your video. My mum showed me. And I realized something. If that man could be brave enough to stand with you, maybe I could be brave enough to stand with me. So I joined a boxing club. I'm not good yet, but I'm trying. Thank you for showing me it's okay to try." Emma closed the laptop, tears streaming down her face. She thought about her father, the man she'd never known, the soldier who died halfway around the world before she could remember his face. She thought about Hawk, who'd kept a promise for 16 years without being asked. She thought about every person who'd ever stood up when it would have been easier to sit down. And she thought about the girl she used to be, the one who walked onto that stage shaking, terrified, convinced the world would destroy her. That girl was still inside her, but she wasn't alone anymore. 10 years later, spring, 2034. The memorial service was held on a hillside overlooking the Ohio River, under a sky so blue it hurt to look at. Victor Hawk Garrison had died peacefully in his sleep at the age of 63. His Harley parked outside his cabin, his leather jacket draped over a chair, a half-finished cup of coffee still sitting on the table. He'd lived exactly the way he wanted, and he died the same way. Over 500 people showed up to say goodbye. Riders from 12 states, veterans, teachers, social workers, kids who'd been saved, parents who'd been given hope. And at the front of the crowd, standing with her husband and their two young daughters, was Emma. She didn't cry. Not yet. She'd cried plenty in the days before. Now she just stood and remembered. When it was time for people to speak, Emma walked to the front. She looked out at the sea of faces, leather and tears and flags snapping in the wind, and she smiled. "Hawke didn't like speeches," she said, "so I'll keep this short." She pulled a piece of paper from her pocket. It was old, creased, the ink faded, the business card he'd given her 10 years ago. "This," she said, holding it up, "is the most important thing anyone ever gave me. Not because of what's written on it, but because of what it meant. It meant I wasn't alone. It meant someone saw me. It meant promises aren't just words. They're lifelines." Her voice broke, but she kept going. "Hawke taught me that courage isn't loud. It's quiet. It's showing up. It's extending your hand when no one else will. It's keeping your word even when the world forgets." She looked at the casket, draped in an American flag and surrounded by wildflowers. "You kept your promise, Hawke. And because of that, I'm still here. And I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure other people know they're not alone either." She folded the card, kissed it, and placed it on the casket. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything." 15 years later, spring 2039, the documentary premiered at the Sundance Film Festival to a standing ovation. It was called The Promise Keeper, and it told the story of Victor Garrison, Emma Caldwell, and the night that changed both their lives. It featured interviews, archival footage, and never-before-seen letters between Hawke and Emma spanning over a decade. But the final scene was the one that made people weep. It showed Emma, now 44, grey, streaking her hair, laugh lines around her eyes, standing on the stage of her own non-profit organization, the Danny Caldwell Foundation for Youth Empowerment. Behind her were hundreds of kids, dancers, artists, writers, survivors, all of whom had been given a second chance because someone decided to keep a promise. Emma looked directly into the camera and said, "My father made a friend promise to look after me. That friend kept his word. And because of that, I'm here. My kids are here. These kids are here. Promises matter, not because they're easy, but because they echo. One act of courage can ripple through generations. So if you're watching this and you're struggling, if you feel invisible, unworthy, alone, I want you to know something." She paused, eyes shining. "Someone sees you, someone believes in you, and if no one else will stand with you, I will. That's my promise." The screen faded to black, and in theaters across the country, people sat in the dark and wept. Not because the story was sad, but because it was true, because sometimes all it takes is one person willing to climb on stage, one person willing to extend their hand, one person willing to say, "You're not alone," and the world changes. The promise wall still stands in that barn outside Ashford Creek. It's over 30 feet long now, covered in thousands of stories. Every Saturday, people still gather, they still share, they still promise, and somewhere on a highway under an endless sky, a lone motorcycle engine hums, because promises don't die. They ride on.